As the first speaker for the proposition, there are a few points that I want to make in order to lay the foundation on the basis of which today's debate should take place. As a student of history, the thing that I am most enraptured by is the context of the national movement, the process that led to the making of our constitution, a constitution that I believe is one of the best in the world, giving each one of us as citizens of India the rights that make us effective citizens and individuals that are free. Of course, that is, in theory, it is an aspiration. But I think that aspiration sets the ground for the kind of political state and community that should have come into existence in 1950. That what we have in reality doesn't match what is there in the Constitution, doesn't make the Constitution redundant. The aspirations of those who fought for the independence of this country are important. It is not we who made the sacrifices. The sacrifices that were made by the women, men, and children through the course of the late 19th and the better part of the 20th century are the foundations on which this nation was created. It is so important to understand that this nation was not to be a nation of different communities divided on the basis of religion, caste, race, geographical origins, or even caste. The fact that there was enough effort made through the national movement and in the framing of this constitution to try and surpass those primordial identities is something that we need to lay claim to. These identities of caste, religion, region, and race had kept this subcontinent divided. The identity of the nation that was created is extremely new. The fact that this country that we live in and has been in existence for the last 70 years is absolutely new, is something that we need to keep in our minds. This identity that we have as Indians is absolutely new. And if in this context we do not try to integrate the peoples that have been divided on the basis of caste, religion, and region, then the hope of this country staying one is so fragile. Let us keep in mind that British India was divided on this very identity and called to this identity politics. Pakistan would never have been created if in the course of the national movement, our national leaders hadn't made appeal to these identities. Identity based on being a Hindu or a Muslim was again new, just created in the 19th century through the process of law and judiciary. And when we turn to that identity again post-independence, we are making this national identity even more fragile. Look at the appeals that were made by Bhagat Singh and the others of the Hindustan Socialist Republican Party. Look at the basis on which Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose designed, imagined the India that he wanted. It was based not on religion, not on caste, not on the place of origin of birth of any one of these individuals within this country. Yes, to think of us as individuals itself is new. Because prior to it, our identities were completely covered up in the context of our families or the communities in which we lived, whether within rural India or urban India, whether it is in the context of belonging to a particular religion or a caste. It is so important to surpass these identities, despite the fact that even in pre-independence India, the INC, as well as other organizations that had come into existence, constantly evoked support on the basis of caste and religion. And that explains why Pakistan was created. And if you're continuing to use those identities post-independence, we are saying that the very basis on which we live is so fragile. We are a diverse nation, diverse in terms of our culture, diverse in terms of our history, diverse in terms of the various communities that we all represent. And we need to celebrate the diversity. But when we are electing our representatives to govern this diverse country, control and administer this diverse region, it cannot be on the basis of those identities. We have to be able to forge this new identity of being Indians. Look at the poetry, look at the literature that was composed in pre-independence India. The effort was to help us to go beyond these narrow identities, identities that are parochial, identities that are primordial, and therefore identities which marginalize those that have always been marginalized, women and Dalits. Appeal to the identities of religion or caste has been only beneficial to the elite in these communities. And which is why post-independence, 70 years since we've become independent, 67 years since we've got this constitution, which has been seeking to forge a unity that is based on the diversity, but to surpass these diversities, we are yet not been able to think of ourselves as Indians first. And as a consequence, have been repeatedly falling prey to the caste politics, to communal politics, and in the process, people who should have been able to enjoy justice, liberty, equality, that the Constitution promises are the new values on which this nation has been created, are yet to see that happen. Because politics has been fought on the narrower identities. And therefore, the appeal that I want to make in this context of this debate that we are having is not to strengthen those primordial identities. Let us look to the facts. Let us look to the reality of what this nation is. And if we are going to emphasize the divisiveness rather than the beauty of the unity of who we are, I'm not talking about homogenization at all. We are a diverse nation, diverse on all these fronts, but the important thing is to realize that despite that homogeneity that cannot be, there can still be unity. Just as within the context of our family, within the context of even just our hands, right? We have 5 fingers. Each of those fingers are differently shaped and sized. But this hand cannot work if all those fingers do not come together. Within a family, each one of us have different tastes, different ambitions, different goals. But that family cannot exist as one if the entire family doesn't create space for the diversity and yet think of itself as one unit. And that is something that we in India need to recognize. We haven't always been Indians, and therefore there cannot be space to call for support on the basis of caste, religion, region, race, or any other community identities. With that, I stop here. Thank you.